I think your daughter's got the right idea. She didn't want to be contained, and she was looking over at you, I'm sure, in your beautiful white dress, and reaching out her hand, wanting to make connection. So that's a beautiful image. So maybe you can introduce yourselves after Mass. But that's a beautiful way of thinking about the church, realizing that we're called to make connections with one another. We're called to realize together and to worship God. And parents, if you teach your children that there is a God, and if you, well, it won't take you long for them to know you're not, but you will have taught them something so important, that there's something bigger than these individual babies and these three beautiful triplets, as beautiful as they are. There's something greater than each and every one of us, and that is the God whose praises we sing every time we come to this place. And I hope that we do that daily, regularly, that we pray and we give praise and thanks to God for all that is. I'm glad I was born in a very rural part of England with green fields and leafy lanes and forests. We called it a reservoir, but it really wasn't. But it was a beautiful place for a child to grow up. Jesus himself grew up at a time when human beings were so close to nature and so dependent on it, dependent on the rain, depending on the crop growing. And he gives us that beautiful image of a vine. And he reminds us he's the vine, so we're not the vine, but we are the branches. And we're asked to bear fruit. And any of you that are gardeners know how painful it is when pruning time comes. We have these crepe myrtles scattered throughout the campus. They're abundant in March and summertime with flowers and leaves. And then when our maintenance men get at them, you'd think they'd kill them by cutting all these branches off. But no, more branches come back. So for those of us who follow Christ, we know that there's things in our life that we have to deal with. And that's why we pray in the assembly. That's why we pray in the quietness of our own hearts. So that we have the gift to look at our lives, the lives that we're living, the lives you're living as parents. And is the life that you're living something you want them to inherit? Something they'll look up to and be proud of? And that's why in the church we have something called detachment. Knowing through prayer, penance, through counsel, what it is we might need to let go of. Habits that have perhaps clung too long, but never too long for God's mercy, and allowing him to prune us so that we can become what we were created for. And so these rich images of growth in the scriptures, in the Gospels, remind us that the earth from which all growth comes is so precious to God. And this is what Pope Francis asks of us. He calls us to feel deeply our stewardship to care for the earth and for the poor. As people of faith, we honor our Creator as we care for creation. I'd like to look after that. Francis reminds us of his namesake, St. Francis of Assisi. And he says, "Praise be to you, my Lord." St. Francis of Assisi reminds us that our common home, the earth we inhabit, is like a sister with whom we share our life, and a beautiful mother who opens our arms to embrace us. This sister now cries out to us because of the harm that we have inflicted on her. This is why the earth herself, burdened and laid waste, is among the most abandoned and maltreated of our poor. He takes a quote from Paul and says, "She groans in travail." We have forgotten that we ourselves are dust of the earth. Our very bodies are made up of her elements. We breathe her air, and we receive life and refreshment from her waters. A wonderful encyclical that came out a few years ago, asking us to care for the earth that your children are going to inhabit, that your children will have clean air and clean water, that they won't see waters and waterways as receptacles of our waste, but will be totally rethink how we live and how we give praise to God by our very actions. And admitting when we've gone down the wrong road, and creation and each and every one of us is suffering because of it. Another quote, thank you, from St. Francis himself. And this is the nature of the God in the nature of the God that your children are going to be baptized in, that you are going to receive communion from this very God who created all that exists, is coming to you under the gift of bread, under the guise of bread. This is what St. Francis said. I think God might be a little prejudiced. For once he asked me to join him on a walk through this world. And we gazed into every heart on this earth. And I noticed he lingered a bit longer before any face that was weeping, and before any eyes that were laughing. And sometimes when we passed a soul in worship, God too would kneel down. I have come to learn God adores his creation. Please like, subscribe, or comment below.